this is what I call a perfect film. Like there are certain films that define a genre or just somehow get everything right.
Definitely buttered and salted. A ton of action. I again say light on plot. It's a standard escort mission. You're not supposed to be asking too many questions. You're just meant to jump into this preformed world and just enjoy it for what it is.
Nux is the convert in this story.
Yeah.
And he's fully given into a false religion and a false god. He believes in Joe. He wants to go out gloriously. He got the road to Fury Road instead of Damascus. And he's the Pauline. Yes. He's persecuting them. He drives off to persecute them, has a conversion, and goes from persecuting them to then being persecuted and ultimately becoming a martyr.
You are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Witness, movie lovers and theology nerds, the glory of popcorn theology, where we race through films to see where they drive parallel to the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, careening between what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful motoring movie consumption. I'm Immortan James.
And I'm Imperator Eric, and we're looking at Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
All the gears and all the, I guess you can say it, all the gear porn in this film is fantastic. So it is directed by George Miller and starring Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, Nicholas Hoult, Zoe Saldana, and a whole bunch more. So
that's right.
James, what's this about? What are we doing?
Well, I thought I might ask my friends Richard and Miles here. They're here for those. if you're watching versus listening, I got my friends. This is Richard, and this is Miles. So our two founding hosts are with us. They're not. I'm hoping they don't gnaw on my neck a little bit during the episode. But in this movie, we have a stark desert wasteland populated by a broken humanity, driven by survival and an unending quest for water, guns, and gasoline, not necessarily in that order. And we find a loner named Max caught in the middle of an escape attempt by the heroine Furiosa and her female companions. She struggles to return to her homeland and escape the clutches of a ruthless desert warlord, Immortan Joe. With the harsh desert sands in front of them and motoring marauders behind them, only the maddest will prevail the oncoming storms. So yeah, what did you think of this movie, Eric, as our ratings go? Was it stale? Was it fresh? In fact, it's 10 years old now, 2015.
Yep.
So did you find it stale after 10 years or still fresh or buttered and salted, which should be the best?
Yeah, it's still buttered and salted. It is fun and chaotic. It is just nonstop for basically 2 full hours, except for the brief part in Act 2 where it slows down a little bit.
Just enough to catch your breath.
Exactly. Just enough to be like, okay, just enough to set up part 3. So it was fantastic, chaotic from the beginning to the end. I will say not a lot of plot, but the action spectacle makes up for anything.
All right. Well, I'm going to go buttered and salted, obviously, too. Honestly, this is in my top 10 films of the 20 teens, most likely. And really, it's really at that top place. 2014-15, we had Captain America, the Winter Soldier. We had Guardians of the Galaxy. We had Daredevil. Even a bunch of my favorite comic book stuff was right in this Days of Future Past, the X-Men. These couple of years really produced a ton of films across multiple genres that I think Hollywood was at its apex. And I think, sadly, it's, with few exceptions, it's been mostly a downhill slide from there.
Yep.
This film drops you in the middle of a mess and makes you pick up the world and its people and its religion and its pathos primarily through inference. I think it's probably the quintessential film if I wanted to have somebody understand what it means to show, not tell, as far as exposition versus showing through the medium that you have. And I think maybe it has a little more plot than you think, but we'll get into that. I think it says more than many action movies, but manages to do it non-verbally. But what about then the theology side of things? Would you say that messaging in this action film would be diluted, or would it be carbonated, something you can drink from and enjoy, or is the cup running over? Is it my cup runneth over on themes?
So I'm going with carbonated. It had the potential to be my cup runneth over, but I don't think the themes that they try to address themselves are actually that deep, and the film doesn't actually try to explore a lot of them in really any meaningful ways. So a lot of religious verbiage and undertones, but again, the film doesn't try to explore them that much. And some of the images and stuff like that, particularly right at the end of the movie, it kind of made me wonder like what they thought they were trying to say. Is this a feminist triumphant film? You have the mothers releasing all the water at the end of the day. You have the male hero exiting stage right, and the and the feminine hero at the top. Is what were they trying to say? I don't know, because the film doesn't actually try to do it. It's a lot of images, and so it leaves up for a lot of interpretation. So that's why I'm going with carbonated.
Well, I'll agree. It's carbonated. I don't think it's cup runneth over like a film like The Matrix, for instance, just sort of bustling with examples. Yep. But I think that's partially because its simplicity is part of its purity. I was actually thinking about it in terms of the original Star Wars, which if you can actually put yourself where some people, current generation, it's really hard, right? But the first film stood on its own for the first trilogy stood on its own for 20 years.
Yeah.
And in that first film, which then for 3 years, I mean, boy loses home, meets mentor and friends, rescues princess, blows up a Death Star, right? We know very little about the Force. With things like the Clone Wars are literally a throwaway phrase.
Yep.
So in A New Hope, we know about as much as we do about Immortan Joe's false religion or how the world got this way, but still plenty to talk about it. And it's something I think maybe has been lost from film, and that maybe it's more fun because it's not spelled out.
Yeah.
And leaves it to something that we used to call back in the day imagination. But
I'm going to make sure I put in the SpongeBob imagination at this stage.
That's right. Well, this film is 10 years old, so this is about all you're going to get as far as non-spoiler stuff. So I'm going to drop that spoiler warning now, and let's just dig in. So it's time for our popcorn thoughts. So we'll pop the popcorn.
Always fresh. I love it.
That's right. So what, Eric, were the things that stood out for you? Anything you liked or didn't like, or maybe the standout moment just from a fun and popcorn perspective?
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely buttered and salted. A ton of action. I, again, say light on plot. It's a standard escort mission. If you're familiar with video games and stuff, it's a standard escort mission type of stuff. You're not supposed to be asking too many questions. You're just meant to jump into this preformed world and just enjoy it for what it is. Thoroughly enjoyable, completely worth your time. The amount of practical effects does put this in just a tier above filmmaking. Like this is the type of film when you watch The Fall Guy that you understand. Like The Fall Guy's a love letter to practical effects and stunt guys and stuff like that. Because of films like this, is a lot of practical effects and stunt guys putting their lives on the line in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I'm glad you stole that. No, I was going to mention it if you didn't. So perfect.
Yeah. Standout moment. Honestly, it's the initial escape. Especially when they first go off the road and it starts to build the tension and they start to realize what's going on. The initial escape, fantastic. Completely, totally chaotic, especially when the war band shows up. And then the insanity of the guy with the flame guitar. It's like, okay, I'm here. I don't care. I don't care if there was never another word of dialogue in the film. I'm here to watch this. So it's one of those, this is so ridiculous, but I love it moments.
Back when Kat and I actually were helping administrate cosplay competitions, we had a guy who showed up as the doof. And he had a full backdrop of the speaker thing behind him. Like they had to roll it around, and he was in this thing. It was pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
No flames though.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you're in indoor competition, I get it. Yeah, the fire chief said no. Again, acting all around is top notch. The main theme of seeking a better world resonates with a lot of people, and it gets you that instant buy-in from the audience. And it lets you know what the stakes are, like trying to save these women from this, that's the initial part, is saving these women from enslavement and getting away from Immortan Joe. But James, how about you? What are your deeper popcorny thoughts?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say this is what I call a perfect film. Like there are certain films that define a genre or just somehow get everything right, and that's a rare thing. Like a lot of people would say The Dark Knight is a perfect film, right? Christopher Nolan, kind of perfect on every level. That's also Miles' Batman reference for the episode. I love a lot of films, but I'd rarely say they're perfect. Like I love a movie called Dark City. It's kind of like The Matrix, but it's a little more film noirish, and the effects are like I love it. I think maybe in some ways it's superior to The Matrix, but the effects are definitely lower budget, and it kind of shows. Predator is a fantastic film that holds up, a great 80s action film with some sci-fi. But Arnold Schwarzenegger is not Tom Hardy. Let's just put it that way, right? Right. This was like Terminator 2 was for the 90s, in my opinion. This is a film that executes and elevates its genre on every level. So I mean, it's a perfect film, but it's only supposed to be the action film that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
The effects look fantastic. With so little CGI. Even that flame guitar, real.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost watch. I just actually watched it behind the scenes, and they showed the final truck crash, where then the sound truck crashes into it, and everything except that steering wheel that flies at the screen. All that stuff is that's just stuff really exploding off in the explosion.
Really? Wow.
Actually, I think the steering wheel that kind of comes down right in front, and I think one other piece were CGI'd in, and everything else is practical effects of a real crash. I was like, it's unbelievable. The pole guys were ex-Cirque du Soleil guys, and they really had them on vehicles like that. And Tom Hardy strapped and hanging from the one, like all of that. So him strapped to the front of the car, just so crazy. And the choreography itself was amazing. Like the fight where they're still chained together, and it's almost the fight with the girls, but also with Nux and also with Max. It's like a three-way fight. There's almost slapstick in that. It's so funny. Like it's funny, even though it's good action choreography. And it's one of those things like the Lord of the Rings, where the costumes and sets feel lived in, feel real, feel dirty. Nothing feels like a set. And Hardy's performance, again, almost with no dialogue, and of course something in front of his face, because just a very Tom Hardy thing.
Just something he likes to do. Yeah.
So it's on the short list of probably some of my greatest action films of all time. Die Hard and others. Easily my top 3 post-apocalyptic films. Probably right up there with The Book of Eli.
Yeah,
and
fantastic film.
Yeah,
another fantastic film.
And just so much sheer imagination. Like you think about a lot of the Marvel movies and stuff that's come out, they're good, but they're living off of images that were put into comics 15, 20, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Like you're looking at like that scoop construction vehicle on the back of the truck so much just for this movie imagination that went into set design and construction. And I just sort of mind blowing. Just even a throwaway shot, like the sort of rotating green room that the plants and different things.
Oh yeah.
Just like so many sets that you only see for a couple of minutes in the movie. So meticulously designed. It's just kind of crazy. I think, and when it comes to the action effects you're talking about, also I think it's the kind of action movie, unless something dramatically changes with Western culture, we're never going to see a movie like this again.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, I think that's a shame. That's a shame. So it's funny enough. So Miles and I talked about this just the other night recording TMNT. Was all modern movies are about like 30 minutes too long.
Oh yeah.
Ironically, this is a 2-hour movie, and it did not feel like it. It is so well paced, and I think it's unfortunately because it was successful, at least fan wise. I don't remember how well it did on the actual box office, but it fan wise, people loved it. Obviously, enough to warrant a sequel or prequel technically. But I think its success is what helped make people making movies longer and longer. And I already mentioned The Fall Guy. I mentioned this in the movie the other night. I think that movie's probably about 15 minutes too long. Love that film. It's actually a film I actually bought because I was like, I'm going to watch this film more times. So I'm actually going to buy it instead of relying on whatever streaming service decides to have it this week or not. But it is still like everything's too long. But this film didn't feel like it. It was so well paced, and chaotic the entire time. You're on the edge of your seat, and yet it didn't. You never got tired of it. It was great.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you said low on plot. I wanted to talk about that a little bit too, because like I think it's the kind of movie that communicates non-verbally and through inference. And the more I've watched it, probably maybe me about 10 times now, you begin to realize as you're watching it, like, okay, they're not saying it explicitly, but you're learning about this trio of towns with exclusive corners on trade, right? You've got protection, transportation, and sustenance, right? The Bullet Farm, Gas Town, and Morton Joe controls food and water. Even little moments, just like, oh, he's actually growing plants and things, which is very hard. So you've got this fragile ecosystem of leaders who then they have no love for each other. Again, like kind of like you see in the original A New Hope's thing, where you have the Governor Tarkin and all the leaders meeting, and there's no love lost between them. And I love the guy who's literally counting the cost while he's like, we've expended this much on the resources, and then you have this guy who set himself up with the water of life, and kind of like he's a Norse god, mingling Valhalla and eternal life, trying to procreate and produce a non-diseased heir, and his weird breathing apparatus. Again, it's like Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
And in A New Hope, you're like, I don't know what it is, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but it's cool. And so I love that traditional
his abs body armor that he has on it. Yeah. So he still has abs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like we knew very little about Darth Vader in Star Wars when it came out, but we fell in love with him anyway. And so I love that traditional elements of plot happen off screen. Like, obviously, it's like, okay, these women actually had a desire to leave, planned an escape, but we don't need to see that. In fact, I really liked that, I think a normal movie now would be 20 minutes longer, like you said, and they'd show the women in that space before the escape. Like the first time we even see that room or know that he has women is only when he walks in and there aren't any there. That it's just such a better way. It's an economy of storytelling that's getting a lot of the story in without needing to walk you through it in a linear, boring mode. And even then you think about Max's pieces too. He's haunted. Yeah. But they like, what was that? Who's the young girl? Is it his real daughter? Was it just some person he failed to protect? Did he actually fail? We don't know. Right? Is it that he feels like he failed, or did he really fail? Did he actually let people down because of something he did? Or did he actually try hard, but sometimes you can do everything right and still lose. Right? The fact, there's a lot going on in faces and phrases the more you watch the film. Yeah. Even reading the entire tattoo down Max's back to understand, like, oh, they put all relevant information on somebody: his height, weight, where he was caught, blood type. It even says like psychotic, keep muzzled at all times. So what it lacks in text, it makes up for in subtext, and so to me, it is saying it's communicating a lot. So it's like, is it light on plot? I don't know. What do you think?
So it could be, and I could be using plot in different ways and stuff like that. So for me, like, having a fully formed world that people inhabit and having a plot are two different things in my opinion.
Okay.
Being dropped into a fully formed world is different than what actually takes place in that world. And so there's a lot of this world of Max that I want to know a lot more about. Like, I'm particularly but these 2 hours of this world of Max doesn't have a lot of plot beyond escape to a better world. Again, I'm not saying this is bad, but it is just a fairly straightforward A to B, but then realizing you need to go back to A story. We've seen these stories a lot of times. Again, not bad at all. I'm just saying there's a lot of storylines you could have explored from this journey, but I don't think this film chose the most interesting one it could have. It chose a really cool one, really chaotic one, but I don't think it was the one in this particular part about talking about themes and theology and being able to pull stuff out. I don't think it picked the most interesting one we could have talked about. Again, fantastic film and completely buttered and salted. I also don't want people to confuse the other end of the spectrum, where a film has a lot of world building in it and it's telling you everything about it, but then doesn't have a plot either. So just because you tell me a lot about your world doesn't mean you told me about your story. So that's how I'm using plot a little bit more than
plot versus the story you actually engage with the characters versus maybe the world building it communicates verbally or non-verbally. Exactly. I get that, which is funny because why this movie probably appeals to me is the same reason I like Blade Runner.
The
movie Blade Runner, there's obviously a lot that, like, there's this fully formed world that your characters are in, but it's really a very straightforward detective slash policeman after a very small set of characters and a rather small story set against what seems like a lot going on, but a lot isn't explained. You almost have this finite, trivial story within a world that seems expansive and filled with wonder. There must be something about that I kind of think is interesting that maybe isn't what everybody likes best.
And it's kind of one of those where it's like it definitely feels like a lived in world.
Yeah.
And it's like you need that. And I think a lot of it comes down to the set designs, the small little line here, line there about Bullet Town and what's the other one? Bullet Town and
Gastown.
Gastown, yeah. It's like there's those lines there that happen, or someone talking about the crows section, or the ground being sour.
Oh, the guys on the guys on the stilts. What are they about? Yeah,
exactly. It's like some really cool, like lived in almost. I don't like to use the word because people don't like it, but mystery boxy because people don't like Abrams anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's a lot of it's like mystery boxy. You want to know more about it. Whereas for me, I was like, well, what was the actual story that was told? Like you mentioned Star Wars several times. Like there's some really good Star Wars films. Star Wars has the ability to feel lived in, like especially look at the first one, but then look at some of the later ones and you're just like, you're not telling really interesting stories anymore.
No.
And your worlds don't feel lived in anymore either.
Misa agree.
Yeah. But question for you, James, because I have not seen the original films. Have you seen the original films? And if you have, how do they hold up? How does this film hold up to the originals?
Well, see, this is where I would say, again, when I call it a perfect film, I think that this film achieved what the other films always aspired to be. Like they were bogged down in their day and the effects and low budgets and even not, obviously a young Mel Gibson, great casting, but the rest of the actors and actresses were a very mixed bag. So the other films, I go back, like the original Mad Max is kind of an odd, awkward little Australian film, and the ending is really cool, but a lot of it just sort of meanders. Then it was The Road Warrior that kind of got everybody's attention, and was like, that's a solid film and I'd say watch The Road Warrior and watch Fury Road. The first Mad Max is almost unnecessary. It doesn't even seem like the world is fully thought through.
Okay.
And then Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which followed The Road Warrior, it kind of falls on it. Tina Turner shows up and the whole thing kind of just goes south. So, and then Furioso is sort of honestly average too. So there's, out of the 5, there's 2 I'd say are really worth watching. One, you watch it with a sense of the nostalgia for its day. And this one kind of, I think, just finally being able to technologically and practically achieve what all the others desired to do.
Interesting. Cool. Well, yeah, I'll have to check out the Road Warrior then.
Yeah.
So before we get to our theology section, we want to encourage everyone to like and share the episode with your friends. Let's broaden that conversation. Obviously, you want to hear more, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Discord. One other quick way you can support us is reviews. We haven't had some good reviews in a while, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, just go ahead and give us a 5-star review and help get us back into that algorithm thing. You know how those algorithms work. They like everything new.
That's right.
Even if you've been around for over a decade, which Popcorn Theology has, the algorithm prefers new to old. So go ahead and give us some views. And if you really like what you hear, support us on Patreon. Become a patron saint for just a few dollars a month. You can help steer the direction of Popcorn Theology. This was a Patreon pick.
That's right.
So patron saints have been trying for, I think, the last 3 months to get this in, as we are going back through the year 2015 and finding all the films that we missed to cover back then. So.
And I didn't stack the vote. I thought about it. I thought about getting in there. And with these 2 guys, I could have voted 3 times. But.
Yeah. I actually voted against it. Me and my wife. So it still won. So good job, patron saints. I'm glad that I was forced to watch this again. But it was awesome. So with that, let's go ahead and drop our ads, and we'll get back to the world of Mad Max.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane!
Cinemagogue, The Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagogue book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, The Marvel Us Era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions. Hey, this is James, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's because you're interested in movies, or theology, or best of all, both. And that probably means you're our kind of people, sharing things in common with our community, and maybe sharing common interests our listeners and viewers would be interested in as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's a big part of what we're all about. So for more information on advertising with us, contact info@popcorntheology.com. We are back, everybody. It is time to get into the more spiritual aspects of this film. So we will pour some theological soda and shift gears, if you will. Hopefully, there's nothing that's going to lock down the system. I didn't hit 1, 2, and then red, black, go. But
was that the actual sequence? I didn't pay any attention. When she was like, "Do you have it?" And if I was there, I would be like, "No, no, I do not have that."
and of course, all Max does is say, so many great lines achieved by grunting. So yeah, let's discuss the theological themes of Mad Max Fury Road. So what was it that stood out to you, Eric?
So I'm calling my section the Imago Dei Prevails. And so this world is actually what a lot of people believe, or some people even wish the world would descend into if there actually was an apocalypse that took place. I personally don't believe that's true. I have theological reasons why, but I would say it would only happen unless you want to say that this is a world that God has actually abandoned and allowed men to be given into their depravity. And I'm thinking of Romans 1, starting in 18, said, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his internal power and divine nature, has been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, for they became futile in their thinking, and foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up to the lusts of their hearts, to impurity, to dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passions for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves a due penalty for error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. And they were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they knew God's righteous decrees that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them.
Tell me how you really feel.
Exactly. So if we're talking about that world, a world that God has said, all right, let's go ahead. You have the world that you want, that you in your heart you desire. I'll let you go ahead and act out your not total depravity, but your utter depravity, and let you see how the world actually is. If that's the world we're talking about, okay, I can get behind that. And you start to see how that plays out in this world here. So when people stop worshiping God, they fall immediately back into paganism. Those old gods that Christianity defeated, they come back around, and then people begin to seek after the strong personalities. You see that with Nux when he's driving by, and he just, Immortan Joe just glances over at him and he goes, he looked at me. That's the desire for this.
No, he was just surveying the horizon. Yeah,
exactly.
I love that.
And it's like this. They're just seeking after these strong personalities. We see Valhalla is back again. Like people are like, oh, is it dying in combat, dying and get greeted into Valhalla. It's like, why are Australians all about Valhalla? I don't know. The phrases of "witness me," like these religious phraseology, the religion of "I live, I die, I live again." Yeah. Where are these coming from? When you're denying the worship of the true God, they just fall immediately back into paganism. It's as if we are designed by God for a particular purpose.
Yeah, when you were talking about Romans, it kind of reminded me of a vision of the pre-flood humanity talks about in Genesis 6, right? It says, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. Right? It's like the Joker's vision of humanity in Dark Knight come to life. When the chips are down, these people will eat each other. Here, literally, apparently some people literally are eating each other. Yeah. And Kat even noticed, my wife Kat, when we were watching it this time, she's like, there's even some places where like Furiosa never tries to appeal to Max's better nature until it becomes a little more obviously borne out. It's like, there's not even an assumption that men have a better nature. Like there's like, you can't do this, or we're just like, no, there's not even an attempt, even though he was a prisoner. Yeah. That's like the normal lines, that normal movie things where you would expect them to appeal to this or say, don't leave us here. Like, nope. It's just not there because people have given up even thinking that's possible.
Yep. Yeah. And I say that, I agree, but I think the film doesn't in a way, because even in that world that we just described, that Romans 1 world, the Genesis 5 world or Genesis 6 world, is because even in that world, the Imago Dei shines forward. It shines. You can see it in Max. You can see it in Furiosa. You even see it in Nux as he changes. And you particularly see it when they're fighting to save the girls and get to Eden. You have new life that they're going, no, you can't be a slave. You can't live in this, this despicable world. And it's almost as if they're all seeking something different. And it's something that doesn't fit into the world of Mad Max, and they say it a couple of times, hope and redemption. Those words have no business being in this world of Mad Max unless It's reflecting something else, how the world was originally supposed to be. And C.S. Lewis says, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. And Saint Augustine. I always forget. Augustine's the town, Augustine's the man. Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in you." And so while I may quibble on what exactly C.S. Lewis means by made for another world, I believe it's true, like broadly, that we were made for a relationship with God, and that we're not finding this satisfaction in this world, it's because we're missing that disconnection. And God made us to be his image on earth, and through our own sin we seek to obscure that. But even in that obscuring, we're still showing God's what his initial intended purpose was. Even Immortan Joe, by wanting to uphold property rights, that's my property, and Furiosa believing that people can't be property. Neither of those worldviews have any true grounding in a life under the sun world of Mad Max.
Yeah.
But those two ideas, property rights and humans cannot be property, those ideas, those have to be imported from another world. And that's where I'm saying the Imago Dei, even the world of Max, the Imago Dei prevails.
Yeah. Well, at one point, he even, like Max says, he says, hope is a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's like at his lowest, he says hope is a mistake. But then he's the one who comes up with a plan that maybe that some redemption can be achieved.
Yeah.
And so that you see that dichotomy within them of both despair. Yeah, it's like this is just a life under the sun. Like, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe at the end of Ecclesiastes, after Solomon's gone on for 13 chapters, I think it's 13 chapters of, whoa, vanity of vanities, and this life under the sun, he goes, but God. So basically how he ends. It's like, but after I've said everything I've said, love God and obey his commands. Yeah. And it's like it's that shift that happens with it. So James, how about you? What are your main themes that you got out of this watch through?
Well, even playing off what you said, Immortan Joe is playing off the reality that these kids, these war boys, they have eternity in their hearts, right? Yeah. There's something that they are aware of, that there is this sense of more. Right? There's a sense of a better world or a next world, or so he names it Valhalla, and prays on that as a kind of cult leader. And I think I'll get to that in a second, but when you talk about that it's a simple theme, I think you're right as far as a plot goes. It's funny, I don't play a ton of video games, so I wouldn't have gotten the ESCORT story out of there. But what I would say is it's not an escort, it's the Exodus.
Yes.
And it's the Exodus with a slice of Jesus. And with an extra slice of Jesus, perhaps, in the Exodus story.
I was about to say, it's like, Hebrews told us he is the Exodus. So
yeah, there you go. So it's mushing them all together a little bit. And then, of course, it's not just an Exodus, because you said it's not just A to B, it's then B back to A. So something else in the story of Jesus has come back in there as well. And when you think about it, like Furiosa starts as a Moses figure. And I think Max then serves as a slice of divine providence, albeit reluctant. He's like a Christ-like figure dropped into the mix that enables her plan to prevail, which, of course, Moses could not have achieved anything without some divine providence and control within all of that as well. But let's back up, because when we think about Furiosa, I also think she's representative of mankind in some ways, because she's taken from the green place, quote unquote. So it's a metaphor for losing Eden and losing paradise. And when you just say losing paradise, you could be, oh, wait a minute. Are you absolving, man lost paradise? That almost sounds like I'm absolving the humans of any responsibility in that. But then it's kind of funny, even though we don't, we get very little backstory on these characters. But even she, when Max is talking about what she wants, she doesn't just want restoration. She says she's looking for redemption. So there's some sin in Furiosa's past. She's not the girl boss who's perfect. There's obviously some stains in there that are unspoken. Clearly she isn't without sin. And so Eden has been lost, and there's this idea of a desired restoration or getting back to, which we'll get to more of that on a second. But then, like Moses, she's been raised for what it's been. I counted the days. I think she says was 7,000.
Yeah, something like that.
19.7 years in immortal Pharaoh's kingdom, and elevated to a high status, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know whether maybe she had to murder somebody before she got him out of there. I don't know. So she's the imperator, and yet she's decided that her people are these. She's going to rescue the other women, and they're going to go. Right. And she leads them out, gets pursued. The seas don't part, but this windstorm comes in and kind of providentially lets them escape. And then they're aided by the nearly superhuman Max Rakatoxy. So
an avenging angel. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then she leads these women into the desert. And what happens? Just like Israel, the one of them starts complaining.
Yes,
we should go back. We should go back. We were better off. At least we had food.
He'll forgive us. He'll forgive us.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. He'll have mercy. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to Pharaoh. Let's go back to Immortan Joe. And now Max then obviously isn't Christ, but it's kind of crazy how much they play off Christ-like imagery right from the get-go. Right, he's caught being used as a blood bag, and right at the beginning, within the first 20 minutes or first 10 minutes, he's strapped onto a cross, and they show it from behind. It's literally a cross, and he's strapped to it. And his blood's giving life to Nux while they're racing off into this place. And then obviously Max is a rough personality and has his own mental problems. But after the initial interaction where they scuffle for control with Furiosa and the ladies, from then on in the movie, he actually proceeds to be firm but fair. Right? And so he's the iconic character, kind of like Conan the Barbarian, kind of like Clint Eastwood or The Man with No Name. He's this iconic savior character that just drops into the story, into the particular situation, and winds up being the key to the remedy. And without them, they never could have taken down Joe or the other bosses. And Furiosa recognizes his power. Like, it's so refreshing to not have it be a movie where Furiosa kicks butt and he's like Star-Lord or one of the other sort of dopey and effectual males.
Yeah.
He's Tarzan. He's Jake Sully. Like it's not that the women in the story can't be powerful, but there's mutual respect. And I think even a recognition of his superiority. Like that when he goes off into the darkness, like he understands her specialties and lets her take that shot like over his shoulder. But then he goes off into the darkness and just comes back covered in blood. And she's like, that's not his blood.
That's like, that's one of the best lines. Are you okay? Are you hurt? That's not his blood.
Yeah. Like he's a man, a very masculine man of few words who can be trusted and will absolutely crush the enemy. Yeah. Like that. It's not the masculinity we want to emulate literally, but there's a lot of symbolic imagery there.
There are times when, may be the masculinity you actually need to give out. But those times are few.
And I know ladies want us all to process our feelings just like men, but sometimes is enough. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's that. And of course, what is he with his blood? He's a universal donor.
Yeah.
And so then again, he gives his blood to save Furiosa at the end as well, bringing her back from what seems like it's like, oh, she's dying. And she comes back from the edge of death. And he not only gives her his lifeblood, he finally then gives her the name by which she's been saved.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute.
Yep.
Wait a minute. My name is Max.
He gives her breath too. Yeah. In a different way with the.
Oh yeah. Like she can't breathe. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's the one who ultimately reveals that they can't go back to the green place, which is a very biblical idea. Like they can't go back to Eden. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so like what ultimately needs to happen is evil must be confronted. The king and the kingdom have to be vanquished and overthrown, and a new kingdom has to be established, which is the biblical imagery we understand in Revelation, right? Satan is thrown down. A new kingdom is established. The Savior saves.
Is a forward marching religion. The Christian militant is an army. The gates of hell are being assailed.
Yeah.
We're not. And the gates of hell won't prevail.
That's right.
It is a forward moving. We do not, again, we don't look back to Eden. We look forward to the city.
Yeah. And the wicked are cast down from their high places.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? So Max isn't a full Christ figure. And in fact, at the end, then it almost seems like maybe he's the Moses figure. Like he's still haunted or guilty by whatever they don't fully explain. And he can't enter this promised land. Like he's like, here's the promised land. Now you all can have it. And I'm still outside. And so, or maybe it's an earthly victory and the Christ archetype is just vanishing, right? I've achieved this. Maybe I'll be back. And so maybe he's off to assist or free others. So it's playing with heroic archetypes, and none of them fit exactly. He's like the Apocalypse Wasteland's Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who was that Max man, right? That's
yeah.
But unless he chooses to give new life to these characters and their circumstances. And I don't think it's coincidence then that Nux also receives blood from Max. Not that they're implying anything literal happened, but I think just symbolically, Nux is the convert in this story.
Yeah.
And he's fully given into a false religion and a false god. He believes in Joe. He wants to go out gloriously. And we got the road to Fury Road instead of Damascus. And he's the Pauline. Yes. He's persecuting them. He drives off to persecute them, has a conversion, and goes from persecuting them to then being persecuted and ultimately becoming a martyr. And actually, it guy chokes me up when he goes out.
The blood of the one he persecuted is what redeems him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, his interaction with Max, or then interaction with the people who are escaping, and like seeing them and their interactions. It's like he is transformed by interaction with these figures and whatever they represent. Now, I suppose we could accuse him of just being attracted to the girl. So So when we get to the reject section, we might have to talk about missionary dating. But
yeah.
But
honestly, it doesn't even, just so people know, it actually doesn't even work for Mormons long term. I looked up the data this morning. Apparently, it's like they're huge in the missionary dating, but only about 25% of their converts are still Mormon after 5 years. So anyway, so that's just the difference. It doesn't work.
See, now I would love to say that, but I have a good friend who's the product of it. So
I'll say it for you, James.
Right. It should never be the norm, because when it happens, it's the providential exception to the norm. So
exactly.
So some conversions may have started with dating a Christian girl, but that shouldn't be the attraction. And it's not as if she dated him either. Yes. I guess what might attract a man to come to church might be seeing a pretty lady. But obviously I think we understand Nux sees a little more than that along the road. So he sees something better than the broken and toxic system of not so immortal Joe. And it gives him a cause that then was worth dying for. And I think he does so silently whisper. He says
Witness
sort of, but just out to her, because I think he does want. So, but it seems less prideful in that moment.
Yes.
It seems more earnest in that. It's gone from prideful to this earnest hope of remember me, and to where he even he knew what he was doing. I think he knew he was going to die the whole time. So, and Nicholas Hoult, again, we have a role that has very little on the page. I think he elevated the material.
I think this was the first movie I ever saw him in. And I was like, it's this or maybe First Class or something like that, because he's in First Class, right? Yeah. And so it's either one of those where the first time I saw him and I was like, oh, this guy can act. And now he's going to be in a movie next month that we'll be covering, Superman, as
well. So this was prep. This was his bald prep for Lex Luthor.
Yes.
And his bug eating prep for Renfield.
Oh yes, that's right. I forgot about Renfield. That's a fun flick. Yeah. Another 15 minutes too long movie, but it was fun.
This movie, I've watched a bunch of classic movies the last few weeks, all of which are under 2 hours. In fact, we watched through the Mission Impossible series up until the last few, the first half of which were all under 2 hours. I think Hollywood needs to reassess the value of economy and storytelling. And the effectiveness of it, because it's probably what's affecting. It's one of many things affecting box office sales.
Well, it's simple math. If you have a movie 30 minutes shorter, that means you can show probably one or two more a day.
Yeah.
Simple math.
And if you stop trying to make the movie for everybody watching it on their phones later, or not watching it and half paying attention, so you have to have characters that say everything before it's done, you see that's half the time. So,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, well, good stuff. I suppose that probably means we should dive into our lightning round as we begin to look toward wrapping up.
Yeah. As we go into the massive sandstorm that was
That's
just
right.
insane.
Now,
I was like, that was incredible. I was like, again, you can tell a movie's good because it had a whole bunch of practical effects, obviously.
Yeah.
But then when it did use the CGI, like in that scene, it was so well done. So well done. I thoroughly enjoyed that scene.
Again, that's one of those reasons I do say it's a perfect film, because James Cameron was always good at that. Steven Spielberg, usually good at that. Like there's certain guys in each decade that knew this is the limitations of the technology I have, and so I'm going to push it right to the edge. But you can go back and watch this film, The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
The
originals, not the 90s remix.
Right. Right. But there are just certain movies. James Cameron was great at it. He's like, he made The Abyss, or he made Terminator 2. But he didn't try to make Avatar in 1991. Right. Because you knew there's some guys who just know this is as far as I can push. And 20 years from now, it will still look good.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, Fury Road looks better than a bunch of films I've seen this year in terms of CGI.
Absolutely.
And it's knowing how that right blend and knowing not to push it too far. Because 10 years from now, it'll look fake. And
yes,
only certain people do. So what are some things we need to? So that's a very practical reject. Don't overplay your CGI hand. What are some spiritual things we need to thoughtfully reject from this film?
Yeah. So I'm going with the phrase "witness me, I live, I die, I live again." Some of these quotes that were in this, I've seen them online in some different circles and quotes and stuff like that, and people from a lot of different backgrounds, some Christians, some not, just all fans of this film, and they're just repeating these lines. And again, without the full context of what these mean, even within the story, it makes me wonder if this is kind of like a Hakuna Matata type of moment, where it's like we all coming out singing the song. It's like, oh, that was a great catchy song, but the entire plot of the movie was don't live life Hakuna Matata. It's actually that grow up, become the king. Don't run away from your past. And so it makes me wonder what the film was trying to mean by witness me, or I live, I die, I live again. It definitely wasn't me. Like a Christian could absolutely sign on to I live, I die, I live again.
Yeah.
That's a very Christian saying. But when you're repeating it, are you meaning the Christian thing? Or are you meaning Mad Max, Valhalla, or whatever it is type of, whatever their theology was. So reject is don't repeat cool slogans or sayings if you don't know what they actually mean, which is something you shouldn't have to tell people. But we live in the age of the internet, and we all love to just repeat things without understanding the broader context. So that'd be my reject.
As Max himself would say, that's bait.
Yeah, that's bait. Exactly. That's bait. Yeah.
Maybe the biggest meme to come out of this over the years.
Yes.
So
it was like, what a lovely day. Which is another great one. Yeah.
Oh my. Well, yeah, I would also say there's a moment where Max kind of gives probably the best idea of redemption this movie has to offer. And he kind of says, he says the plan is to go back and try to take down the Citadel. And he's like, well, at least that way we might be able to together come across some kind of redemption. Now, obviously, if we see this film symbolically and a character perhaps representing Christ allegorically, we might be able to redeem that idea. But just in a general reject, Christians have to remind others and even sometimes remind ourselves that redemption isn't found in simply pulling together. It won't be found in human unity or human solidarity or a made family. It can only be found first in a vertical relationship restored, right? A relationship restored with our Creator that comes exclusively through Christ. And so like redemption isn't just unity and pulling together in the human spirit. And that's where it's like, well, we don't want to miss the forest for the trees there as far as what real redemption looks like.
Yeah, no, definitely agreeing.
What about receiving or redeeming? What can we do with some things in this film?
So my redeem is so like watching this and wishing he could live in the world of Max, particularly in a way so that
You think
wouldn't
people
have to
really
you wouldn't have to follow the sometimes contrived morality of civilized society. I've seen a lot of people like glamorize the wild or glamorize the
Really?
anti-hero that it's the whole idea of the Punisher. The Punisher acts outside of the law. He doesn't have a law. He doesn't have a judge above him. He gets to be judge, jury, executioner. And a lot of times our Christian morality gets in the way of what we want to actually be able to do. We want to be able to be the man who takes matters into his own hands and overthrows the tyrant. But has God given us the sword to actually do that? Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But I think so. When I say redeem this is because we want to be cool. We want to be cool like Max but we have to remember that there is a law above us. Christ actually has put a morality into us, and that's the morality. He's redeeming the world, but he's redeeming the world through us and through our sanctification. And so when we're more like him and we have more morality like his, that's what takes over the world, and that's what conquers the world. It's not men taking up arms to be laws unto themselves. So by all means, then I'm never a pacifist, so I want to make that clear. By all means, be a Max and take up arms to defend the helpless, but also be a builder and live in that society. And to live in a society means you must be self-controlled, which is a really hard thing for men to do. Yeah. A lot of men, particularly right now, we glamorize the wilderness. We glamorize it. We glamorize the past. Same thing we were talking about earlier about we can't go back to Eden. A lot of people are looking into the past instead of looking forward. And God is a builder. And when he chose to start his highest creation, which is mankind, the thing that is in his image, he puts them in a garden and then commands them to tame the world, not to live in the wilderness, but to tame the wilderness, to bring it all under dominion. When Christ incarnated, he came as a carpenter. Yet again, another thing of building. And in Revelation, when God comes back with Christ and the Spirit, they're dwelling in a city, so we're going from garden to city. There is no more wilderness. There is none of this escaping out into the end. So Max, I encourage those who want to be like Max is be like Max in the times you need, but also don't go back into the wild after the victory. Stick around and be a builder. Be a builder with people. And who knows, watching this film, I don't buy that Gastown and the other town didn't just band together and go take over and overthrow the Citadel. I know that's what would happen. The women the weak, all the people that were over at the Citadel, they would not survive an actual onslaught from the other towns. So they actually still needed Max, in my personal opinion. Just watching this film, just seeing how it all happened is like, yeah, no, all of them are dead. Them taking over the Citadel, they don't win. They do not win this thing because there's also too many people on the inside of the Citadel that will there's too many traitors on the inside. So Max should have stuck around and been a leader and helped prepare them for the war that was just about to get started. So anyway, that's why men engage in the world, don't disengage, even if you've done your duty or done your task.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be in a broken world and keep continuing to just sort of eschew or have disdain for all the things that are wrong versus actually working together with the community to try to build something that looks better. Yeah. That's part of the problem sometimes Christians run into is they spend a lot of their time making sure everybody knows what we're against, instead of actually focusing on which needs to be communicated, but are we communicating as much or more about that which we're for and is positive and can be built or can be put together. Yeah, the negativity versus actually working to achieve something it's a lot easier to live in the wilderness and talk about how the world stinks like that.
Yep.
I see where you're going with some of that, and know some people that probably live there when they should be living a little more in a productive community. So,
Yep. How
very
about you,
true.
James? What do you got?
Oh, well, again, I think you can look at this movie and obviously like the characters Max and Furiosa don't exhibit any religion whatsoever. So the only religion we see is, of course, Immortan Joe, and some might then say the movie is kind of mocking religion. Right? So the only religion is something that's obviously a little bit crazy, a little bit silly. Let's put the chrome on our teeth. But I think that's a very easily receive and redeem aspect, because I see the very real danger of what we would say called blind faith. Christianity isn't a blind faith. Being brainwashed into a cult or false religion is something that legitimately happens. And we were talking earlier about, I mean, we would fall on the side of saying Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses have gone off and astray from orthodoxy and the real faith, and can have aspects of false religion and works-based religion. And I'm actually more specifically thinking lately of Abdullah Hashem. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's the leading, he is a cult leader of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, and claims to be the culmination of Abraham and Muhammad, and claims to be basically, he formed actually in 2015. I didn't realize that. But a lot of Muslims and a lot of young men and women, like his cult has like thousands of people in a compound in the UK and people all around the world. And he's claiming to be the culmination of both Islam and Judaism, and attracting a lot of followers. I think they literally believe he's like Immortan Joe, he's divine. And it's like, wow, these things really happen. So like, this isn't just a mockery of religion. It's sadly a test case of what real people fall into. So we need to redeem that, be aware of that, be aware of false teachers and leaders like that, and calling them out for sure. I was also just thinking about the very last line of the movie, the written line, and it's credited to the first history man, but that's a fictional character in the Mad Max universe. So it says, "Where must we go, we who wander this wasteland in search of our better selves?" Last line, right? And it's like, well, I read that, and maybe some people just read it and think it's profound and poetic, but it's like, no, Christianity has the answer to that question, right? And it begins not in finding my better self, but ultimately looking outside of self and finding a savior who can redeem me and change me, who gave his blood for my sins, that I can someday be glorified as God would have me be. It says we will be glorified when we're by him in his kingdom. And so, like, in some ways, like you talked about how could the world fall back into this? I feel like we've probably seen seasons. I think about Immortan Joe. It's like, well, what would it have been like to live in Genghis Khan's kingdom? Yeah. Or eras of human history that I think about. And it's just, well, yeah, these are some pretty terrible places where our world has been a wasteland. And I think even figuratively, we could say culturally, America is it's an apocalypse. From a cultural, spiritual perspective, it's a bit of a wasteland right now.
Yes.
Even in our first world environments, it's still a wasteland of sorts. And maybe the problem may be people are searching for their better self instead of searching for their savior.
Well, again, that's why I say the Imago Dei is what is going to prevail, because as I think it was John Calvin that said, it's like, the moment I start to look and explore myself, I'm instantly put back the other direction. That's why it was his debate when he wrote the Institutes of, do I start with the doctrine of man or do I start with the doctrine of God? And said, because the moment you start with either, you immediately go to the other one and then back to the other one. And it's just constant back and forth. And I think that's why the Imago Dei will, even though we are in a spiritual wasteland in some regards, we still are yearning after the divine and the sacred. And you see that with all of the bespoke religions that start to come about, and the young people seeking religion, whether it's authentic Christianity or just Christianity light that they can add onto it with a conservative spin.
Yeah.
The Imago Dei is what's driving them in that direction, and it is God's image in us that is going to win out on the day.
And it's our job then as Christians to point to the true citadel.
Yes, yes.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this episode. I'm glad the Patreons picked it. I'm glad our patron saints decided it was finally time that we gave Max his due. And so until next time, keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective. And remember, being a mindless consumer, that's bait.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts, and consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.